A walkthrough of the New Testament. 400 years of silence. From the ending of Malachi to the beginning of Matthew. The powers of the time were Greece, that had a common language, Israel, that had a common hope, and Rome, that had common roads. The politics of the time were the Sanhedrin, the Jewish rulers, the scribes who copied the law, Sadducees who did not believe in resurrection, Pharisees obeyed all their rules, publicans who collected taxes, and zealots who would kill for the Messiah. The Gospels give us 4 distinct views, but one good news. In 4 to 5 BC in Bethlehem, Jesus Christ is born. In Nazareth is the place where he learned to be a carpenter. In AD 26, Jesus came to the Jordan River, where he was baptized by John. He then removed himself to the wilderness, where he was tempted by Satan. His first miracle was in Cana, where he turned the water to wine. He moved to Capernaum, where he selected the 12 and performed the Sermon on the Mount. He demonstrated power over Satan, and when disbelief set in, the parable started. In Jerusalem, he told Nicodemus of the second birth. In Samaria, he approached the woman at the well. Back in Nazareth, he faced rejection. And then a storm was stilled, the crowd was filled. Even more, there was the walking on the water, the testimony of Peter, and the transfiguration. Back in Jerusalem, stones flew, and Jesus withdrew. In Perea, where he preached about counting the costs and seeking the lost. Back in Judah, Lazarus was raised, and Zacchaeus was praised. In AD 30 in Jerusalem, Jesus came with a triumphal entry. More so, Christ cleansed the temple and had the Last Supper with his disciples. In the garden he prayed and was betrayed. Soon after, he was tried by the Jews and denied 3 times by Peter. While on trial, Christ was crucified by the Romans and resurrected by God thereafter. After 40 days, Jesus ascended. 10 days later, the Spirit descended at the Feast of Pentecost. What happened next? Peter and John cure a lame man. Ananias and Sapphira are caught in embezzlement. And then 7 deacons are chosen, including Stephen, who faced persecution, and Philip, who preached in Samaria. On the road to Damascus, Paul converts Peter's vision in Caesarea. Peter and James. Peter in jail experiences a night release, and James is martyred. In AD 46, Paul's first missionary journey lasted 2 years and was mainly in the region of Galatia. In AD 48, the apostles gathered in Jerusalem and met in a council. Did the Gentiles have to follow the law? No. Looking at the apostles, Matthew wrote a gospel, James wrote a letter, and Paul wrote to the Galatians. In AD 49, Paul's secondary missionary journey lasted 3 years and was mainly in the regions of Macedonia, Greece, and Achaia. In Paul's letters, Paul wrote 2 letters to the Thessalonians. In AD 53, Paul's third missionary journey lasted 4 years and was mainly in the region of Asia. Paul's letters he wrote to the Corinthians twice and once to the Romans. AD 58, back in Jerusalem, Paul faced 3 trials. The trials he faced were before Felix and Festus, as well as Agrippa. Looking at Luke, Luke wrote a gospel and the book of Acts. In Rome, Paul faced his first Roman imprisonment. Prison writings he wrote were the prison epistles: Ephesians, Colossians, Philemon, and Philippians. In AD 62, it ended in his freedom, and he wrote the pastoral epistles, Titus and 1 Timothy. In AD 64, Rome was burned, and begins Paul's secondary Roman imprisonment. Prison writings from this imprisonment were his final letter to Timothy. In AD 68, it ended with Paul being martyred. More so, Peter wrote 2 letters and helped Mark write a gospel. Hebrews and Jude were also then written. Which comes to AD 70, which is the fall of Jerusalem. John, many years later, wrote the 4th gospel and 3 letters. And finally, in AD 95, John was exiled onto the island of Patmos, where he received the revelation of Jesus Christ.